Hi, everyone. This is Rich Berliner from Charged Up. Welcome to the Charged Up podcast. Today, I'm really happy to have Bassem Ammouri from EV Connect with us. And really interesting fellow, interesting company. And I can't wait to get started and talk about what they're doing. So, Bassem, thank you so much for being with me today. Appreciate it very much. And
Absolutely.
tell us a little bit about EV Connect and what you're doing. What's the unique selling proposition here? Because I'm really interested in it. It's an interesting company, and you've got an interesting pathway to get here. So tell us a little bit about EV Connect.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the chance to be here with you. This is a great podcast, and I'm happy to be part of it and represent EV Connect. So, what does EV Connect do? So, we are a provider of software for managing EV charging and the EV charging business. So that's kind of a broad phrase when I say the EV charging business, but what we do is we provide the network that communicates with EV chargers in mostly commercial spaces. So we are the what's called the charge point management system, the CPMS. We're the platform, but we also provide the full solution if you are in need of a source for the EV chargers, or the service to install those EV chargers, or the services to maintain those chargers over time, keep them up and running. And then in addition to that, of course, our core is the software to operate them, the module that you can use to monitor the performance of the chargers, see their status, see if they're charging. You can set the price to use the chargers. You can do integrations with other software you might use. So I like to use our name as kind of a little bit tongue in cheek, but we are a connection point for EV charging. We're EV Connect. We're
Gotcha.
based in Los Angeles, California. We have about a little bit over 100 employees globally.
Gotcha. So in terms of my background in the wireless business, where I spent most of my career, so you are a full turnkey operator, but you focus on the software for load management and operating the network. Is that sort of categorize it properly?
That's fair. Yes. Yeah. We've leaned in really recently more towards that turnkey, right? More and more of our customers are looking to us to do more and more of the value chain for EV chargers. So yes, but to be clear, the piece that we make is the software. We partner for the rest of the turnkey solution.
So one of the things we're doing, and as part of this podcast series, we're going to be doing a four-part series on software. So I'm very hopeful that we can get you involved in that after this podcast. But my understanding of it is very limited, but I'm really learning quickly on this. So the reason we're doing this as a four-parter is we've got sort of we've taken a cut for the low IQ people like me on the in the industry. Um, that I want to do the first one on the software universe, meaning the firmware that's in the charger itself, which is really software. Then the connection between the charging station and the network itself, and then sort of load management and operating software as the three parts of the software. Do I have that anywhere close to the way it really works and the way software is laid out?
I think as a fellow low IQ person,
I doubt
yeah,
that. I don't agree with that.
I like that divide. Yeah, there's the firmware. The firmware is provided by the manufacturer of the charger. So there's many manufacturers of chargers. Each of them have their firmware. And then there's the charge point management system, which is the software that communicates with that firmware. So one thing that we think about a lot is is the protocol, is the language, or are the features that we speak, our software, compatible with the features that the firmware on the hardware can speak, right? In terms of just like software communication protocol. And then there's also, and sometimes maybe just to keep it simple, yeah, there's the third bucket that you said, which is for monitoring and providing service on the chargers. And sometimes that's provided by the hardware manufacturer. And then in addition, that's a software that we can provide as well at EV Connect.
Funny because I was talking to some folks, and this is still a mystery to me. And maybe as the software guru on this call, on this podcast, you can answer this. But I went by a charging station at my local mall the other day, and one of the chargers, first of all, it was a sort of an old charger with advertising on both sides, but there's no advertising in there. It was just the name of the charging operator.
Hmm.
And one of the cars was hooked up there, and the owner had happily gone off to the mall. And on the panel, it said security violation. And obviously, he wasn't getting any juice. So I have no idea what security violation means in the communications protocol or whatever. But I wonder, is that something that you would care to have an opinion on, what security violation might be in that situation?
In that situation, so that's something between the vehicle and the network that they're connecting to, and then the firmware on the hard. I guess in that situation, it could have something to do with payment. Perhaps it was unable to collect the initial payment to start the charging session. Um,
Yeah.
that's my only thought. I don't.
I got to
Yeah,
tell you, it's a puzzler to everybody I've spoken to in the software space. But I think it's emblematic. The reason I bring it up is I think it's emblematic of the kind of stuff that's going on in our
yeah,
business that it's really very difficult sometimes to know what these units are trying to tell you. And now, if I'm an end user pulling up to that station with my car at 7%, and it says security violation, and I call up the number, the 800 number, and they go, I don't know.
yeah.
That's why I think education and what we're trying to do with Charged Up is so important because really there's still a lot of mystery here in
So
these things. So then let's take it, sort of one step further in the part of this whole thing, which is um, that piece of it that the customer is now, we wrote a story and it went as closely as I can think of and as to viral on LinkedIn for us. I got like 12,000 impressions on this one story, but we wrote about station anxiety. And isn't that kind of emblematic of, if you go and you pull up and you know what the message is, can't communicate with the network or something, it's one thing. But if it says security violation, you don't know what the problem is. But people are very nervous. So how is the EV Connect universe to you look from that standpoint in terms of making sure your network is running and it's efficient and its uptime is what it should be?
well, we're very proud of our software's uptime. Um, but our software is like we've talked about one piece of the pie, right? There's the hardware, there's the vehicle itself, there's three, sometimes four pieces of the equation that make that charger work when you plug it into your car. Um, so we do our best, first of all, to make sure that our charging software is up and running, that our network is there, that our app is online, right? That the CPMS is working, that it can be used when it needs to be used when that charger is plugged in. And then we also think a lot about how closely we integrate with the hardware partners that are certified on our network. So we have a certification process to work with those partners, make sure that their firmware and our software is communicating and that our features are workable, are feasible on that hardware. So we're pretty selective and we're very close with those hardware partners. We truly see them as partners, so that interlock between our charge our our network and their charger can work. Third piece of it is the vehicle OEMs themselves. So now that the cars are becoming smarter and there's features, things like plug and charge and auto charge, that enable like less interaction between the driver and the charger. You just plug it in and it starts charging. Um, so now that's sort of a third leg of the stool to make sure that we can all communicate together. And it's all about just racking up the number of handshakes that can happen. So on where the connection point, like I said, like we've got the hardware manufacturers on one side, vehicle OEMs on the other side need to make sure that we are open. We've always been, we always will be an open protocol software, and we work with our as many of the hardware partners as we can and as many as the OEMs as we can.
Right.
We're
So there's a part of this that you are exactly representative of the thinking in there, and I mean no criticism by this, but there's a
sure.
part of it you can't fix, and there's part of it you can't control, which is if there isn't a cellular connection, or the Wi-Fi happens to be down, or there isn't a protocol to connect at that particular moment, all of this is sort of meaningless. So I think it's really important. Again, I'm very, very prejudiced about this because coming from a wireless connection background or wireless background in my career, I'm very, very curious as to how you view the fact that not only is there a handshake between you and the other people you mentioned, but there's got to be a handshake between you and either a Wi-Fi network, a cellular network, and hopefully someday even a satellite network to
Yeah.
make sure that there's a connection. How do you view that in terms of doing your job on a day-to-day basis?
We enable the site host, right? Where the charger is, who owns the spot, who owns the charger at the end of the day. We enable them to connect in any way that they choose to connect, whether it be cellular or Wi-Fi. So just like we would source the hardware for them as part of our turnkey solution, we can source any connectivity equipment. We've done boosters in the past. That's something that we check on during the commissioning process. So I'd say our role there is to enable it with technology and with just supply of the turnkey equipment and services they need to ensure that that thing can communicate with, like I said, either Wi-Fi or cellular.
Yeah, but if the local cell site's down, there really isn't much you can do. And it,
But
it,
we
it could get, the finger pointed at you, but it's not your fault.
That's the challenge that we play, right? And that's part of like what I really love about this industry is that we are all part of the same sort of rising tide. We have to work together. And we have to sort of go out on a limb and risk that finger being pointed at us because our logo is on the charger, right? Most of the time, we have some partnerships where the logo is not on the part on the charger, but most of the time it's us. We're the number getting called. We're the logo that they get angry at if it doesn't work, even though it could be something to your point completely outside of our scope. But in we can plan for that, right? We're the enabler. So you can program using our software so that if there's connectivity loss, the charger can flip to a free VEN mode if that's what the site host wants, right? Because the goal is always to get the charger charging or get the driver charging rather. And that doesn't require the connectivity. That's just we need electrons flowing.
Right. So you can flip it to multi-mode.
Yeah.
If in other words, if then situation. If the cellular connection doesn't work, we flip to a Wi-Fi mode. And if the Wi-Fi isn't working, they can go in some other open access sort of situation. And someday, hopefully, you'll have a protocol for a satellite connection, at that point too. So I got a quote that I want to give you
Okay.
from one of the key elements in the business, I thought, was school bus charging. School bus
Mm.
charging, school buses were being given out by the government, and there was a real push to get electric school buses out there. And one of the challenges for companies that got these was for them to have charging at their location.
Mm.
And so it's very important to look at these things and understand the software world because, again, you're really firmly embedded in that. One of the things one of the bus companies told us was that 100% of the time, this is maybe an exaggeration, but 100% of the time, right out of the box, when that bus was plugged in for the very first time, it wasn't okay, it works perfectly right out of the chute. There was
Mm.
either, because the 4 millisecond time situation didn't work exactly right, or there was some software protocol, or it was a switch issue, or something wasn't just right that had to be modified. So, that's again another situation when, you've done all your work, you put everything in, everything's working. They plug that first car, that first bus in, and it doesn't go. Does your network give you the ability to do what you need to do to assess and diagnose in the background in that particular situation?
Want to say yes, right? We can't predict every situation, but yes, where as part of our turnkey solution is the services, right? Is the tier one, tier two, and tier three services. That's our terminology. Where one is call the number that's on the charger, and we've got our team of 24/7 call center who's available to answer and help with troubleshooting, help with just answering the questions, right? Tier two is when it gets escalated to do we need to actually communicate with that charger and power cycle it or reset the software or make some remote change that could rectify the situation. And then the one that we hope to avoid, but where it's available if we need to, is tier three, when we can actually roll a truck through one of our many field service partners to go and support on site to get the charger up and running. Right? There's a number of things that could be going wrong. We talked about connectivity. There could be a hardware issue. It could be user error, right? It's not always super clear how to operate. So some of those we can help remotely, and we're staffed up to do that. Some of those do require a site visit, and we're partnered up to do that.
Of course, you're announcing level 4 here, which is call your personal cell phone at 3 o'clock in the morning,
That's
and
right.
you can then help.
There's a picture of my
I
face
hope
and my cell phone number. Call Bassem.
I
Yeah.
hope it never comes to that. Uh,
Yes, me too.
but so, with my communications background, we are doing a seminar in at the Connect X show in May on May 14th in Chicago to
Mhm.
talk about the issues of EV charging, because we think that the vast majority of the work in this day and age is being done by people who have a background in the wireless space, who have done basically an EV charging site is basically a tower site without the tower for
Mhm.
us, the communication space. So I really think you do have a resource out there to work on these communication protocols things, in addition to the other mechanical and physical aspects, that you've got guys that understand the communications protocols that you can
Right.
use in this situation. I think it's a big advantage. And that's why we're doing this. The WIA, the Wireless Infrastructure Association, was enlightened enough to think about doing something about EV charging for just this reason. First thing, it's a near neighbor business. The second is that there's an aspect of it that involves communications that can affect you, but isn't something you can necessarily control. So
Yeah,
I think
totally.
that's a great thing. And
Me
we'd
too.
love to talk offline about having you involved. But
Thank
at
you.
the end of the day, the important thing I think is that you've got a really strong message that you're really hand-holding this process from start to finish. And I think that's a great message. And again, I'm going back to my background in wireless. Everybody was full turnkey. We're full turnkey, although they might have had 2 trucks and 4 employees. Full turnkey, we can do it all. I think it's important that you've got that full turnkey piece really down, whether it's directly internal or it's with partnerships. But I think that hand holding from cradle to grave is the important thing. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you, you've got a COO title. You're the COO of EV Connect.
Right.
EV Connect is a Schneider company. So tell us a little bit about that, how that works, and what
Sure.
the setup of the company is in that setting.
Yes. So EV Connect was acquired by Schneider in 2022. I didn't mention this before. EV Connect was founded in 2009. So
Wow.
early in the EV charging space, or what it looks like today at least, and then acquired in 2022 after 13, 14 years, I guess. And my involvement has been with the post-acquisition synergies, trying to create more cohesion between EV Connect and Schneider so that we can expand that turnkey offering to include the value that Schneider can bring to customers. Um, the structure, to answer your question directly, is EV Connect is still an independent company. Like I said, we are vendor agnostic, still work with all the other charging manufacturers, in addition to Schneider's hardware. And as the COO, I lead the business in a general manager capacity. I report to a board of directors that includes some folks from Schneider and some folks from other companies that are owned by Schneider. One of those companies is our sister company, Q Merit, who very involved with mostly residential charging, but expanding into commercial charging. And they're one of those field service partners that I mentioned. They're a network of charging contractors and electricians.
Gotcha. So I think, you know, strictly from a mercenary standpoint, when it comes to figuring out how I might get a piece of equipment like a transformer from Schneider Electric, that doesn't
Yeah.
seem like it's a bad thing to have you as part of the family. So, I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating that, but it sounds like that could have its advantages.
That's the vision, yes. I mean, we talk about that with many of our larger customers today who are standing up EV charging sites, right? Some of these large CPOs are some of our proudest customers. They're in the business of creating a charging dispensary, a location that's in a convenient spot, high traffic, high utilization, high uptime. So they need to provide a lot of power to this point in location. They need the chargers, they need the software, they need the services if something goes wrong. So through this partnership with Schneider and everything that EV Connect already did with sister companies like Qmerit, I get to start to say that, hey, Mr. CPO, Mrs. CPO, we can provide you truly from the feasibility study, how many chargers will you need based on the utilization that you expect, to the supply of equipment, the chargers, and then will those chargers have power? Well, we can drop in a line with the utility who Schneider has a great relationship with, provide the equipment such as the transformer, the medium voltage and low voltage distribution equipment, the backup switch, the battery, and then of course the chargers and the service to install it and then keep it all up and running. So I like to think, and obviously I'm excited about it. I like to think it's something that adds a lot of value. And the goal for us and with this partnership with Schneider is to just keep that business doing their business, right? Worrying about power distribution is not necessarily their business. So as long as we can do so at a value for money, at a good competitive price, then they're happy to offload as much of that as they can into one partner's scope, like
Yeah,
Schneider.
well, frankly, it makes perfect sense to me that this is a tag team sort of situation, working on the strengths of all the players involved. So I tip
Mhm.
my hat to you. I think you've done a great job. So I'm going to end it there because I think you've covered a lot of ground, and I really appreciate how thoughtful you've been about this and helping us and our audience to understand what's there and what you do. So I'm going to say thank you to Bassem Ammouri from EV Connect. He's the COO of the company, and I'm going to thank you again for being with me today. Thanks for watching, everyone out there, and we'll see you again on the Charged Up podcast real soon. Take care.